Welcome to a very special edition of Social Distillation After Dark, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. With our special guest, my commie friend from the Bay Area. Say hi, Stephen.
Hello. I have no official affiliation with any Communist Party. Thank you.
Official.
So why don't you introduce yourself, and then I'll let Heath kind of pull us into whatever conversation we're going to have.
Sure. You guys invited me here after some interesting discussions about kind of the situation with the pandemic we have going on with COVID. Different opinions on how to handle the vaccines and alternative treatments. So yeah, I decided to take you guys on for that, and I'm sure it'll be an interesting discussion. Sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
And I don't know how you would describe yourself. You'll add a totally different perspective and voice to this, because I'm kind of more of the classical conservative, capital C, U.S. conservative politically. Sam's kind of a left-leaning libertarian. And you live in California, so you're just weird.
A little bit. A little bit.
You're like, I would describe you as a California libertarian, which I find to be very different from libertarians in the rest of the country.
Yeah. I guess that could be one way to look at it. I guess I do have trouble sometimes kind of fitting into these frameworks. It's very hard to kind of just lump all your views into one thing. I guess the best thing I could say for myself is I'm cynical. There is the sort of libertarian, I guess, tendency that I may lean toward in terms of suspicion toward, too much state power in certain things. But I also am equally suspicious of corporate power and wealth being kind of concentrated in one place. So,
well, I guess just by that intro, I've never met you before, and we kind of sort of ish chatted on a gaming thread we had at the most. We're probably going to see eye to eye on a lot of things, which is unfortunate because we were looking to have a little diversity here, but but I think from what Heath was telling me, we will have a little bit of discussion on the COVID messaging at the very least.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but left leaning. You're cynical. I'm probably a little bit more stoic, so we'll be a little bit contrasting there. But well, shoot, I don't know where to get started on this, because
let's start where we left off, which was the Rogan Gupta interview discussion, since that ties directly into the COVID response and the use of ivermectin, which is what we were talking about. Stephen, did you watch it, or did you just see clips of it? Or
so I did not actually get to see that interview. I heard it was a giant disaster, which I believe very much. I'm not too familiar with Gupta, but I from what I saw of the sort of defenses he had, it seemed a little limp-wristed and slapdash. Yeah, I'm curious about what your guys' take on the whole discussion was, since I wasn't able to see the whole thing myself.
Well, my big takeaway from the whole thing was it was actually a good discussion for about 3 hours. Okay, so it was a good discussion for about 2 hours and 45 minutes, and 15 minutes was the back and forth about the CNN lying about the horse dewormer. So that was tense for about 10-15 minutes or so, but the rest of it was a pretty good discussion. And Gupta in that interview seemed like a very reasonable person. My problem with him was the aftermath, where he basically said, "Oh, all that stuff I said, I take it back. I was afraid." And
yeah, I forgot about that part.
That kind of threw me off a little bit, because during the whole discussion, I was like, hey, this guy's got great insights. I really like his thoughts on testing. I really like his thoughts on using antigen tests for reducing exposure. So say I have a healthcare job. I can take an antigen test in the morning and say, well, you know what, shoot, I'm good to go for the day, and just keep repeating that. And it's cheap and easy and affordable. Antibody test before you get vaccinated, which was something we've talked about on our channel quite a bit, is if you have natural immunity, well, not only is it a little bit redundant to get vaccinated immunity, but at the same time, it could be dangerous if you have a high antibody count when you get a vaccine, because that's how the immune system works. So he had all of those statements throughout the interview. And I thought a failure on Rogan's part was the fact that he didn't say, hey, all these things you just said for the last 2 hours, why aren't you saying them on CNN for millions of people to see? And we know why now, because he went back on CNN and took it all back. So that was my takeaway from the whole thing.
Was that the third thing that you forgot to mention earlier that you'd wanted to mention? Is the why haven't you been talking about this on CNN? Yeah, I didn't get into their I had just got to their part where they were talking about ivermectin when I stopped listening. So I don't know how deep into the weeds they got into it, but let's just jump there, since that's where you seem to think I'm a lunatic, Stephen. Is why am I a lunatic for and an idiot for thinking that we should be talking more about a Nobel Prize winning drug with a demonstrated ability to inhibit virus replication?
Now, to be fair, I don't think you're necessarily a lunatic. I do think some of these people you're citing might be lunatics, if not charlatans. But we can always debate that as we get further into the weeds. But yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to the Nobel Prize winning medication, I mean, we have to remember that, lobotomies were given a Nobel Prize, and so was Obama given a Nobel Peace Prize, which also incredibly ironic. but
make lobotomies great again. Let's bring them back.
I like how lobotomies and Obama were in the same sentence.
Well, I mean, the lobotomy was about as medically sound as Obama was for.
You take that
peace.
back. I want one right now.
No. He's right, because they were prescribed with a coat hanger for quite some time. Just get up in there and scrape it all out. Yeah.
But I mean, when it comes to ivermectin's Nobel Prize, I mean, I do get I know your annoyance, one of your annoyances with the whole horse dewormer thing was kind of how exaggerated that was.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I definitely agree that obviously ivermectin is not just prescribed to cattle and sheep. But I think at least for some people that were kind of pushing those jokes, it was because, horse dewormer, like the actual feed, stores were running out of the stuff because people were running in, freaking out, and, self-prescribing ivermectin. But yeah, so I think there was some truth in that, even if there's a potential human application of it.
Well, to me, that's just helping my argument and why I hate everyone and everything, because now this is anecdotal, obviously, but at least in one specific instance I know of, and is going to be verified under penalty of perjury, there is about to be a lawsuit filed against Walmart by someone who was prescribed ivermectin by a doctor for people because he and his wife had tested positive for COVID, and Walmart would not fill the prescription. Even with the doctor calling the pharmacist and saying, what are you doing? Fill this prescription. I wrote this. The pharmacist said, no, I'm not going to do it, and hung up on him. In desperation, that person then went to their feed store, because he knows this stuff because he used to run a family farm for like 20 years. So he knows about this stuff, and he knew how to do the math as well to make it less dangerous for him to take, and he took it out of desperation. So how much is of that was people being stupid and running to the feed store, and how much of it was they had no choice.
Well, they always have a choice.
Not if you're an older person and you have a potentially deadly disease. I mean, what choice do you have if you legitimately think you could be about to die if you don't take this medicine?
Well, I mean, you could try different pharmacies and have your doctor call it into a different pharmacy. Yeah. There is that. No, I understand where you're coming from. It's but we always have choice, and taking something over the counter from a feed store always has risks because it's a different processing, it's a different measurement scale. You don't know what you're getting, and you've got to do the math, which you said this person says they could do, but at the same time, 99% of people that are buying this stuff can't do.
Yeah, and I guess more so than was it wise or not to do that. I'm guessing your point is more how do we feel about people feeling the need to have done it in the first place? And I guess with that, it really comes down to how legitimate do we think the application of ivermectin for COVID treatment actually is. My stance is, at least from the things I've read, and we can get into those things as we go along, is I don't think there is a convincing argument that is reasonable for people to go to a feed store and get ivermectin self-prescribed or self-administered to themselves. And I don't necessarily think that doctors in good conscience have prescribed it to people so far.
Well, we do see an uptick in prescriptions. So doctors in good conscience are prescribing it. But at the same time, there may be other options, and I think people need to explore that, because what we see, what I've seen from the evidence of the literature, is ivermectin does have some viability. It is an anti-pathogen, it is an antiviral, and what we see from the literature is early intervention with an anti-pathogen, with an antihistamine, with an anticoagulant, with an a corticosteroid of some kind, anti-inflammatory. All of those things combined in early intervention can make a huge difference, and you need one of those. And the only one you need to get from a prescription is the antiviral, the antipathogen. And the big debate is over ivermectin, but we've got so many at our disposal that why not plug in XYZ into this equation?
Well, that I don't know, because the only ones the only prescription medicines we've heard about are ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. There was another one, I don't remember which one. There was a medication that was being used early on. I can't remember the name of that. Was that remdesivir?
Remdesivir, which showed absolutely no.
Which at best did nothing, but at worst could cause renal failure. And so far as I still know, that's still listed as an option for treatment. Which,
well, it was listed as the only treatment for a long time.
Right. Which is one of my beefs here, Stephen. You mentioned alternative to what? Because right now, except for remdesivir, which can cause renal failure, the only treatment seems to be isolate until you get really bad and then come to the hospital and we'll put you on a respirator and then, flip a coin to see if you live.
Yeah. And I can empathize with that. I just, from what we've seen so far, if I could share with you guys.
Did I share screen?
Oh yeah, I can.
Okay, you can.
Can I do that? I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with Zoom.
I think I made it to where you could. So.
Okay.
Just make sure you don't accidentally share all your Sailor Moon fanfic.
Okay. I'm actually not familiar with the Zoom screen share function, exactly where it's at.
It's at the bottom of your window
middle.
there.
Bottom, yeah. Oh, share screen. Got it. It's the huge button. Got
Giant button right in front of your face.
Cool.
How do you blur your background like that?
Oh, it's in the virtual backgrounds. The back of the room is not my stuff, so I figured probably best not to broadcast it.
Well, I like the books, but I didn't want the golf clubs because people think I'm
right.
Yuppie.
Like I'm all privileged or something.
Okay, is that showing up okay?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. If I can actually pause the share and pop to this one. Here we go.
What's the date on this one? Can you?
So this one's 2020 July 17th.
Okay.
So it's actually a little earlier. So this is before, if anything, before sort of the I guess the big trend toward ivermectin specifically as an option. But this is where I saw a lot of in vitro arguments coming from. And from this, they found that, where was it? It was, so with the highest dose possible, which was 8.5 times FDA approved dosage for human usage, they could not get any sort of concentration in the plasma high enough in order to actually affect the COVID-19 virus. And what was interesting too was, on top of that, as if those odds weren't already bad enough, apparently ivermectin has a issue binding to plasma proteins. So considering that, it actually required it required a concentration 250 times higher in order to deal with COVID-19. So on top of the 8.5 times dosage times 250, I think we're looking at over 2,000 times the human dosage allowed in order to actually have any effect on COVID with ivermectin, specifically ivermectin. So this is not me, trying to discount the idea of alternative treatments, but just looking at the literature for this, it's been really difficult for me to find anything conclusive enough that would justify giving people such high dosages. I mean, not that they're arguing to give them, 20 times the dosage, but that's what I'm kind of seeing here as what has been shown in lab testing.
Trying to get to my screen so I can bring up my stuff. Hold on.
Yeah, of course. And I can link this into the chat too in case you want to be able to see it at your leisure.
I don't remember. I know I looked at that one. I don't remember if I shared that one when we were talking about it earlier.
I don't remember if you shared that one as well, but let me share this screen here. And I didn't have this quite ready, so I'm gonna have to scroll a little bit, but this is January 2021, therapeutics, how we stand from here. And let's get down to ivermectin. It's pretty far down there. Do you remember what the number was on that dosage?
Yeah, so they were saying, at 8.5 times the approved dosage, it was, where was it?
2 point something IUs, right?
Yeah, it was, let me get the exact number. So they're saying the highest reported dose of approximately 1,700 micrograms per kilogram, which was 8.5 times the FDA approved dose. The maximum plasma concentration was, where is it? Was just about where I believe they needed to expect any sort of inhibition of the coronavirus. So we try to match up those numbers. So it's what, 2. Yeah, it remains to be seen if such high plasma concentration can be safely attained, provided that targets the host protein.
Okay, so here's the dosage that in January they were bringing forward for ivermectin, approximately 2
was that micrometers? Okay, so at 2 micrometers, you were starting to see a reduction in
Well, 5,000-fold reduction.
That's a huge. Okay, so at 2 micrometers, you're seeing a 5,000-fold reduction in viral RNA load. Okay, and then from this cross-referencing that the study I was looking at approximately the 8.5 times the FDA recommended dosage of 1,700 micrograms per kilogram, they were seeing a plasma concentration of 0.28 micrograms. So we'd want to, so we need about, what would that be? 2 divided by 0.28. So over 4 times that dosage.
Over 4 times what I have up here?
Yeah. So they were saying at a concentration of 2 micrograms, we're starting to see a 5,000-fold reduction in the viral RNA load. And then in what I was looking at, it was saying at 8.5 times the FDA approved dosage, they were getting only 0.28 micrograms of plasma concentration. So that would put
which was I got this article from another article, and they cited it based on the amount of ivermectin you would need in your system to potentially thwart the disease, I should say, right. I guess. But then we go down further and we get to the actual clinical trials.
Sure.
And it seemed to be effective to some degree, but only in conjunction with other drugs like the HCQ, which we're not supposed to name, and
azithromycin.
Yeah, azithromycin, and it so realistically, my beef is from the beginning, we should always have been looking at a cocktail of drugs to begin with, including things that are controversial at the moment. But yeah, I guess it's hard to defend a position that I really don't have a hill to die on here, because my perspective is there's reduction. And as long as we have reduction in an arms race, we don't know where the enemy actually lies. We should be jumping on every opportunity. And we have plenty of evidence that there is a reduction with this cheap and affordable drug. And my beef is that it was blocked. Not that it's the end all be all, but that we could have been at least reducing harm until we figured out everything at the final moment.
I guess my question is this before I'm sure if we agree or disagree. I guess what are we worried about them blocking? Like, do you believe that it's been an issue that doctors can't prescribe this stuff openly, or is it something more nefarious? Like, you think there's, clinical trials being blocked from happening?
Yes.
Yes to both. Yes to both.
Okay, so he brought up the Walmart that wouldn't fill the prescription,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it reminded me of another anecdote of here in the DFW area of someone who was prescribed ivermectin after he and his wife tested positive, and he went to a CVS and then went to he went to a Kroger and then went to either CVS or Walgreens, and both of them wouldn't fill the prescription. And I don't remember where he finally found a pharmacy to fill it. I don't remember where that was.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, sorry, do you have a point to make?
Yeah. Knowing the ins and outs of the actual medical field is, so if you're an independent doctor, you can do whatever you want and you take the risk, right? But if you are part of an organization, or if you're part of a hospital or anything along those lines, you're following a directive. And if you go outside of that directive and something goes wrong, then obviously you're the scapegoat for everybody. And that's why things kind of go in a lockstep in this industry. And so you're not going to get a prescription outside of go home and quarantine yourself, get on a ventilator if you're dying, because of all the blocks that are associated with these repurposed drugs. And so that's my beef. So a doctor that actually believes, hey, this can reduce your chance, can't do that because he's in a system. And that system makes sure that that this can't be a viable option just because of the top-down directive. And my beef from the beginning was the top-down directive is if there's a viable treatment, then there can't be an executive use order for the vaccines.
Okay. We got a lot of layers, but
yeah,
I guess
we got
I'm
a lot of
coming in late
layers
to this
there.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we can go point by point. I guess we'll start with, I guess the philosophical question, and the ethical, and I guess kind of legal question of, can we be, should pharmacists be blocking people out of these prescriptions in the first place, right? And this is, from a neutral standpoint, let's put aside, my skepticism of ivermectin and my belief that it's dangerous and useless for COVID. Let's just say it is a potential useful medication. When it comes to prescriptions, I mean, we do have to remember that even if a doctor is prescribing it in good faith, which I don't think they always necessarily are, but if they are prescribing in good faith, they think this will help their patient. I mean, this is going to a pharmacist who must also, in good faith, believe prescribing this will not hurt that person, and that that doctor has not made a mistake. There's been plenty of times where a pharmacist may actually look at a patient's medical record and realize, holy crap, these two medications are going to kill them combined together, and they actually have to go back to the doctor and talk to them about it. So I don't think that is intrinsically a problem. I understand the bigger question of who's deciding these things, where did these instructions come from? That's kind of a larger issue, but just kind of the baseline factor of a pharmacist also having a duty to not just follow the doctor's orders, I think, is not an inherent problem in the medical profession. If anything, I think.
Okay, so we'll stay on this track. So, sure. What literature out there shows that ivermectin is a harm?
Well, we do know that in high dosages, right?
Well, high dosages, but I mean, in a pharmaceutical sense.
Sure, and so in addition to that, there's literature that shows, at least literature that I've seen, for example, the one I showed earlier, there's literature that shows that the dosages of ivermectin needed to actually treat COVID would be lethal. Now, you could make the argument,
but the dosage prescribed by the doctor,
right. So
is there harm in it? Or
right. Oh, very nice. So sorry, the little pop-up on Zoom just distracted me. Is there harm in the dosage given by a doctor? Obviously, the exact prescription we don't have in front of us, but I'm sure many prescriptions that have been given may not be inherently lethal or seriously dangerous in the amount it's prescribed. But again, if it's a medication that is believed to have zero positive benefit and a potential side effect, from the ivermectin's normal side effects we can expect in human usage, I think a pharmacist still has a legitimate reason to not prescribe a medication that they do not believe can be used to treat COVID.
In a vacuum, I would agree with you.
Right.
The problem is we don't live in a vacuum, and this issue in particular has become stupidly politicized. And I have a hard time believing that was anything but a political decision. And especially the way, again, this is going to at some point be put down in testimony or in a affidavit under penalty of perjury. But in the interview I listened to, the way it was described, the pharmacist gave absolutely, in both of the anecdotes I mentioned, the pharmacist gave no explanation. They just said, we won't fill it and I don't have to, and goodbye. I've actually had an experience of a pharmacist who said, hold on a minute. And the way it worked is we worked it out. I couldn't get the prescription filled until I talked to the pharmacist, and he understood what was going on, because they had the pharmacy I was going to, my prescription had been changed, but they still had the old one in the system, and he wouldn't fill the prescription until he'd figured out, okay, you're not getting both of these, are you? Because that would be bad, right? So that was worked out because there was absolutely no explanation, and because of the times we live in. I have a hard time believing this was anything but a political decision, and to me, that's infuriating.
Well, and it is the first law of anything is do no harm when it comes to health, right? Do no harm. But also, if this medication is prescribed by a doctor, obviously he had his reasons, whether it's conspiracy theory, mumbo jumbo, or actual scientific data, right? And on the pharmacist end, his job is to make sure that that prescription doesn't harm the person as well, with contraindications along the way. If there's no harm and there's even a slight chance of improvement, what's the hangup?
And I don't know what the harm would be, because, you know, something that just popped into my head is ivermectin is considered so safe that we the United States, which supposedly is we the people, but I digress. Afghan refugees are being given ivermectin as part of a cocktail of medications because they come from a third world country where they don't have a good healthcare system and they are exposed to all sorts of pathogens that we don't have to worry about. And they're not being tested for anything. It's just, here's a cocktail of stuff that we know is safe and will preemptively treat anything you might have because of the situation you come from. So it's safe enough to do that, but it's not safe enough to even discuss in polite company as a treatment or as part of a treatment regimen for, you know, the unspecified disease from an unknown area.
Well, okay.
Winnie the Pooh.
If we can go back to, I guess, the Nobel Prize that ivermectin won, that was for a viral disease. I think you've mentioned before.
I thought it was anti-parasitical. I thought
it was anti-parasitical. Yes, you're right. You're right.
But also river blindness and
river blindness. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought river blindness was from a parasite.
It was from the parasite itself. Yeah, it was roundworm parasites that it was being used for, and I know we've had studies, you know, since then, and I've looked at not just COVID, but
HIV, dengue disease.
I brought up several earlier. And I was specifically looking for older ones. And I brought up a couple from 2012 talking about inhibiting virus replication for hepatitis E, dengue, HIV, and there was another one, I think. But those are the three I remember because I actually knew what they were.
Yeah. And I think the common thread between all these studies has been that in vitro, there was theoretical possibilities of using ivermectin to deal with these things, but we've never and there's been yet to be any virus that we've tested on that we could actually take it in safe dosages for. And I feel like we're really splitting hairs if
Aren't we over 1 billion doses of this given out?
What's that?
Aren't we over 1 billion doses of this given out? We have data.
Well, I mean concentration, like the amount of the concentration needed in a single patient to actually inhibit at least COVID-19 is astronomical. I don't think we've had any actual demonstration.
But that's the problem in this whole debate is you're thinking about ivermectin as an alone thing. We're talking about a cocktail of treatments. When you really break it down, and actually it's part of the circular reasoning that bothers me, is when we talk about HCQ, ivermectin, and all the other zinc, vitamin D, all the other interventions that we talk about with COVID-19, is you're trying to isolate one thing. But this is a bloodborne disease, which is something that Gupta went into. And
that was the best part of that whole.
This is a bloodborne disease that we're talking about inflammation of the blood vessels. It has to be attacked from a lot of different angles. It's not a one size fits all treatment. It's not we can just give this antiviral pill that will take it out. So we can't inject you with enough ivermectin to kill it. No, we can't. No, we can't inject you with enough vitamin D to kill it. It's not going to work. You can't be so super healthy that it'll kill it. It's not going to work. We have to have a multifaceted approach. And when we look at ivermectin, HCQ, vitamin D, zinc, quercetin, all of those things together, they have a high effective rate. And the problem with the CDC and the FDA and all these other organizations is they're saying, well, ivermectin doesn't work because you use it in conjunction with HCQ. Well, okay, so one of them worked, or they both worked.
Okay, so here's my issue with that is, at least from the theories I've seen, posited toward me regarding both these medications, ivermectin and HCQ, or hydroxychloroquine. Both of them have been allegedly been used as antivirals. So I think it is actually completely and 100% fair to isolate them if that is the function they're supposed to be playing, is an antiviral. Now, if they were used and say, the antiviral effects were effective but not enough, and the patient was still ill because of other reasons, that I understand. We want to talk about the multifaceted part of it. But if we're talking about ivermectin being used as an antiviral, which is what they're saying it is, then we need to look at its effects as an antiviral. And I don't see evidence for that.
Well, that's the marketing campaign. So you're fighting the marketing campaign versus the effectiveness of the drug.
I mean, the study you showed me was talking about inhibiting its ability to replicate. It was a test. It was an experiment for its antiviral capability. Now, if it had said that, it had some sort of other effect other than antiviral aspect that was somehow supposed to be combined with other things, then, and again, that's just one article, but at least the one you shared earlier was talking about its antiviral capabilities, which
the one I showed earlier was a meta-analysis, so it should be multiple articles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or at least the header for ivermectin in particular. I know there's other medications being discussed on the same.
Well, there's also, I think, so this is something I do know a little bit about, is viruses are pesky and they're hard to deal with and they're hard to treat. They're not like a bacteria, which you can kill. Okay. So you don't have antivirals generally have a pretty wide range of effectiveness, and their primary purpose is to make it easier for your body to kill it. So if you're inhibiting the replication even a little bit, then that's going to help your body kill it. And especially if you can add other cocktails on top of it. I mean, for crying out loud, that's what we do with AIDS. We don't have, and it's one of the things that annoys me about the way AIDS is talked about, is we don't have a cure for AIDS. People talk like we do because people live so long with it now. We don't. We have a way to make it livable with a cocktail because we have a way to beat down the virus so much that it can't cause the problems that it was causing, in the 80s when we were first trying to figure out what the heck this was and how to deal with it. But and in fact, here it's my turn to share screen. I'm gonna be shameless here, and I'm gonna make a shameless appeal to emotion, because why not?
Oh, don't ruin this. We're being scientific here.
Screw that. Have either of you watched Dallas Buyers Club?
I have no idea what it is.
It's the reason I can empathize with the.
Okay, so this is a story of a guy in Dallas who contracted AIDS.
Is there supposed to be sound? I don't hear any sound.
Oh, well, that's annoying. Well, I don't know why you're not getting.
I'd cut that clip if you're going to upload this.
Yeah.
That'll get scanned for sure.
Let me just fast forward here to the still that perfectly encapsulates this movie for me and why I think it's relevant here.
Is it him crying? I've seen that meme.
No. So this is just artistically a beautiful shot. The judge has just said, "I'm sorry, I'm bound by the law." Basically, if you've heard the right to try, this is where it came from. The right to try drugs that, yes, they weren't FDA approved for treatment against HIV/AIDS, but they also weren't harmful and might help. And the judges said, no, you don't have a right to try. I can't do anything about this. And stop it. And here you have in the foreground, the FDA guy, who's a great character actor, reaching over to shake hands with the government lawyer. And here you have Matthew McConaughey, who, you know, must have been on the all laxatives all the time diet for this role, sitting in the background, having just basically been told you no longer have a right to try and keep yourself alive. And there the FDA and the government lawyer are congratulating each other. And to me, that perfectly encapsulates the infuriating discussion over this, is that why the hell is it even a discussion between anybody but a doctor and a patient? Okay. Instead, we're having this discussion with, you know, an MMA fight, an MMA enthusiast and stand-up comedian I don't find all that funny, and a head medical expert.
It's just because you don't understand drugs. That's why you don't find him funny.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's well, no, that's not fair, because Steven lives in California, so he knows all about drugs, and he doesn't think Joe Rogan's funny either.
You don't think Joe Rogan's funny?
I don't think he's a fantastic comedian, but that's...
No, I'll give him a B. I'll give him a B at least.
It's generous.
Generous.
He's no Rodney Dangerfield, but he
has funny friends. He's got a lot of really cool people from the LA comedy scene that come on a show sometimes. They're pretty cool.
The point being, why is the discussion being had there and not in the doctor's office? And it's not even in the doctor's office either, because as Sam was saying, for anyone who doesn't know, if you go to a doctor that's part of a large group, the procedures aren't made by doctors, they're made by bureaucrats. And those bureaucrats are taking their cues from other bureaucrats, because they're taking their cues from FDA, CDC, and all that, you know, acronym mafia, so that they can protect their butts from being sued. Because if, and this is one of the things that ticked me off about that spam of links you sent me, is one of them was about Dr. McCullough and his beef with Baylor. Well, the reason Baylor has a beef with Dr. McCullough and is trying to get him to stop using his association with them is because Baylor Scott and White is one of, if not the biggest healthcare system in the state. And they were being sued for not treating someone, for not giving options of treatment to someone on COVID. They just put them on a ventilator. And Dr. McCullough has talked about that. And so his contract with Baylor was terminated, and now they're ticked off that he keeps saying that he used to be associated with Baylor, even though he was.
I think the lawsuit that they had with him was that he could not portray himself. I think I actually have the lawsuit on hand. Do I have it?
Yeah. Well, you sent me an article about it.
Yeah.
But when I went looking at it, and when I listened to him very openly talk about it, oh, there you go. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So you can have something to refer to. This is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is actually new to me, so give me a second to read.
Okay. Yeah. So this lawsuit was about a breach of contract, because I believe they had a confidential separation agreement. Here we go. Mm-hmm. That prevented him from using the improper use of titles or claimed affiliations. And their argument was that he was confusing the media, medical community, and the public because they believe he is currently associated with them. And I think they had several interviews. And I didn't go through their sources to see if he was referring to himself as a current, currently associated with them, or if he was saying, I used to be. So we'll have to kind of see how the lawsuit plays out. Obviously, this will be ongoing for quite a while. Mm-hmm. But the allegations are that he is using his former associations in a misleading manner that has been confusing viewers, the media, and other medical institutions.
Right. And my point is, Baylor's just trying to cover their butt because they're being sued, and they're trying to discredit one of the main voices lending support to people that are suing them. And they're kind of ticked off about that, and they're covering their butts. So to me, this is nothing but a frivolous smear, because every time I've seen an interview of him, and when people give his CV, his time in connections to Baylor are mentioned. And yeah, it could be confusing that is he still there or not. I don't see how that's the point. I mean, for them, that's the point, because
okay, wait, hold on. This cracks me up because I'm in the health and fitness industry, but at one time I worked for Taco Bell. Right?
Yeah.
And if you looked at my resume and said, "Oh, former manager at Taco Bell," and I'm giving advice on not eating Taco Bell, that's a slander to the company. That's the situation we're in with McCullough and Baylor.
I don't know if that's the case. The reason I say that is because at least
was he on staff with Baylor at one time in point?
Yeah,
he was. But
he was. So
also,
that's part of his resume, right?
Yeah,
that's
and
fine.
He's making statements, right?
Right.
And his bio on those statements is former blah blah blah.
It did not say former. That was the problem.
Yeah.
It did not say former on some of these.
Was he still technically?
Not at the time. This article from July 14th on Blaze Media says that he's a cardiologist and vice chief of medicine at Baylor. He was
at that time he was
February.
Okay.
He was separated, so that was months after. And Blaze wanted to represent him as a current vice chief of medicine at Baylor, and that's a clear usage.
I got my problems with Blaze too, so
I'm glad we do. I'm glad we have problems with Blaze.
Yeah, that's a media representation of an individual. And a lot of times that's out of the individual's control if you really break it down.
Sure.
He may have a suit of his own against Blaze if you really break it down.
He might. I'd be interested in seeing him actually do that. I'd be very surprised, but perhaps if I'm mischaracterizing him there. But I mean, I think if you want to go into, I know we've been talking about kind of his accolades and his very legitimate work that he's done. But I've had concerns about what he's been doing since he's been pushing ivermectin as a potential treatment, because the money trail starts getting very questionable for me at that point.
Okay, so my experience looking into McCullough is he was part of the, and before it was an ivermectin thing, of the early intervention crowd, which was really silenced once, and we're going to kill Heath here because it goes back to the Trump era. The Operation Warp Speed started. It cut all treatment options and all funding to treatment options. So whether it was ivermectin or res whatever, Devere, all of those funds were cut, because if we don't get in emergency use authorization for the vaccine, then it's no point in doing Warp Speed, right? And Warp Speed started during the Trump era. So all of these projects were cut back then. So this makes me question everything negative about any treatment option.
So that's why. So you think that this loss in funding at that point is affecting current studies now that are showing that in vitro ivermectin is not effective at human dosages? Because I mean, that seems like a very vast running sort of a waterfall effect.
Well, I'm not standing on ivermectin.
Got it. Just in general.
In general, yeah. All treatment options, because all of a sudden treatment wasn't a big deal. It was vaccine.
Right. Because we do have other treatment options that are actually one that Japan is very interested in right now, an antiviral. And that seems to have had no issues with funding. And actually, funny enough,
yeah, anything outside of the States. That's why I keep going to UK, Israel, Japan.
Well, yeah, but Japan
Singapore.
is also using, I don't remember if it's ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, but while they're working on that, HCQ.
Yeah.
So there are a number of countries that are, Italy is using ivermectin and in a cocktail and having a lot of success with it, and they aren't being talked about at all. It's hard to find that news that this is part of their treatment plan. And remember, probably the big reason that we locked down and everyone started to finally get scared about COVID was when it hit Italy, because we weren't getting good information out of the Chi-Coms, who were welding people inside their houses while they were saying everything's fine. We weren't getting good information out of there. But then when it hit Italy, it hit them hard. And suddenly, because they have a very old population. And suddenly you're in a Western country where it's easy to get plenty of news footage. So they got hit hard, and they're now using ivermectin as part of a cocktail, a treatment regimen, and they're having a lot of success with it. Mexico, I think, is using it, or HCQ. There are a number of countries that are using these treatment regimens and having good success with them. Meanwhile, we're talking about horse paste, and you're an anti-vaxxer if you're cautious about getting one of the vaccines.
So I can't comment on the other countries because I'm not knowledgeable about it. But I know Japan has definitely not approved these alternative treatments. They're using the COVID vaccines. I think they actually are still using the AstraZeneca vaccine that Canada stopped using months ago. They have 3 COVID vaccines they're using out there. And the antiviral that they're looking into is actually an American one made by a manufacturer of ivermectin in the US.
Yeah, Merck,
that also does not.
One.
The Merck antiviral. Japan's looking toward using that as soon as it goes through.
But even there's politics with that, because they were held up for 6 months for some odd reason, i.e. they were connected to Trump.
Merck, is that the company we're thinking of?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they also published a paper about how ivermectin should not be used for COVID and is not effective for use.
Yeah, which they invented ivermectin.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I have that there's no financial incentive for them to,
Wait a minute. Of course there is. They don't get any money off of ivermectin anymore.
Exactly, because they lost the
generic,
and
it costs $1 a pill, and they've got billions of dollars in contracts to develop these new medicines. They've got an absolute interest in saying that. And here we go. Yeah, I have it here because you sent it to me. So here's the Merck statement on ivermectin. No scientific basis for a potential therapeutic effect against COVID-19 from preclinical studies. Hold on a second. That's not saying it's not useful. That's saying there are no preclinical. Well, of course, there are no preclinical studies. We're in the middle of a pandemic and people are trying to come up with treatment regimens.
We have had preclinical studies, though. We went over one earlier with the in vitro testing.
That's not a clinical study. That's in vitro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Preclinical, as in. Got it. Okay. Okay, fair enough. That's narrow.
So this is the second one. Again, they're talking about a concerning lack of safety data in the majority of studies. I find that kind of silly because it's an established drug with established dosages. I don't know why you need to add that in, because it should already be known.
Okay.
Because you're not talking about something new. My point is, especially these first 2 statements here, is, and this is something I keep seeing from people who talk about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, is if you read or listen to what they're saying, they're making it sound like there's absolutely no evidence. But what they're really saying is there's no studies, there's no clinical evidence. Well, there's not going to be clinical evidence. There's not going to be the standard trials and double-blind placebo studies when what you're doing is getting a patient who has confirmed had the disease and they're concerned about, long haul effects or death, and you're just trying to find them a treatment regimen to combat the virus. So, that's why I shared that's why I referenced Dallas Buyers Club. It's the same situation. Oh gosh, well, we can't give you this protein serum. There are no clinical trials. Of course, there are no clinical trials. When I forget the character's name, Matthew McConaughey. When he was diagnosed, when the doctor told him he had AIDS, he was given 30 days to live. There's no clinical trial waiting around for that.
Yeah. Well, there was non-clinical trials though. That's what I was getting at. There was no initial clinical trial phases, but we have had non-clinical trials.
There were 64.
Also, can you scroll up to the top of that? Can I see the author of that? I'm so glad you brought this up. You see that name, Andrew Bryant?
Yeah. There you go.
Are you guys familiar with who Andrew Bryant is?
I don't care.
We can click on him.
He is a member of the British Ivermectin Recommendation Development Group, which is a group that pushes ivermectin. They sell merch on their website if you guys want to check out. They actually prescribe ivermectin for COVID prevention with a weekly dosage. If you want to check out bird-group.org, that's them. And yeah, if we're talking about financial incentives,
so are you attacking the person or are you attacking the article?
You're
attacking the person.
I'm concerned about the agenda of a group of article writers who are trying to push ivermectin on a schedule on a website that sells merchandise and tips for taking ivermectin weekly to prevent.
I'm concerned about an agenda of a group of people who are trying to sell a bunch of jabs for a disease that may or may not kill me. So
sure, let's be consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's be consistent.
So
I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I mean, again, that's a whole different conversation of where we stand with those things. But if you are concerned about, evidence of a vaccine safety from the people that are manufacturing it,
but my question is, can you take this meta-analysis and actually break it down mathematically and say they're wrong?
Right. And of course we have to take a closer look for that, which I can also pull this up while you're looking through it as well.
Oh, I've already looked through it. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sure you have. I would hope you already
also looked through the correction, because there is one big glaring issue that came up and they made a correction on it. It's okay.
I do recall. I think I might recall this study roughly, or at least there was a controversy where they had to pull it down right before they republished it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, one of the studies in their 64 that apparently had bad data assigned to it or whatever, and it got through the peer review, but then they questioned it and they had to go back, and they said, well, if we even pull that one out, which is what I brought up here, then we still get the exact same statistical significance. So even if we pull that study out, it's good. All
right.
While you're looking for the thing you're looking for, the reason I said I don't care is because I'm not a Nazi.
Okay, we've established this point. Okay, all right. There's no swastikas over here.
I hope so. I hope not.
Okay.
So I think I've shared this on one of our previous episodes, but there's a great story I love about Albert Einstein that I'm not sure if it's entirely true or not, but it's certainly fitting with his character, and it's certainly true. And I know there are elements of it that are 100% true. So in the late 30s, Goebbels got a bunch of German scientists to sign this paper denouncing Jewish science, including Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity. And it was something like 200 German scientists had signed this paper. And supposedly a reporter went up to Albert Einstein and asked him for a response, what he thought about this. I mean, there are 200 scientists saying you're wrong. And Einstein said, if they were right, they only would have needed one. The point being, the personalities don't matter, the data and the math matter. So this is one of the things that is raising my antenna about the attacks on these groups that are advocating for ivermectin or HCQ, is that every attack I see, well, some of them will link back to these studies that we're talking about, which, as I've said, I don't think are conclusive of anything, one, but most of the attacks are ad hominem. Most of the attacks are on the personalities and the groups. Okay, well, if they're wrong, you wouldn't need to do that. You would just have the data and the math and prove that they're wrong.
That's fair.
And it's funny because ivermectin is not the hill I'm going to die on. I actually find it funny that the crossover episode we have now is on ivermectin because there's so many other things that I wish we could talk about with COVID-19, but the fact that we have a conclusive meta-analysis with 63, it's not 64 anymore because they took that study out, 63 studies that say we have a moderate amount of evidence that there's a reduction. And this is the key word, reduction. We're not talking about a cure. There is no cure for COVID-19. There never will be a cure for COVID-19, just like there never will be a cure for the flu. There is no cure for COVID-19, but there's a reduction. If there is a 50% reduction, that's a shit ton of people out of 700,000 that have died in the United States, 600 and something thousand that have died in the United States. That's a lot of people. If there's a 30%, that's still a shit ton of people. So if we have something that reduces, why aren't we using it? Especially if it's cheap and available. Okay. That's the same argument made for masks, isn't it?
It is. But here's I want to go back to the sort of ad hominem attacks real quick before we do that. So it is a legitimate concern, and I'll admit that's fair. That you should be able to attack the facts and the data, and not just the people, right? And the reason why there's a bit of a focus on that, at least for me, is that we do have conflicting studies. There is a study that came out after this that you call it conclusive. It's not conclusive. That was their conclusion because the same data was used in other studies. Now, who do we trust more? We have to read through both of these and and see what we're looking at. This is just the sort of the abstract here, but this is also a meta-analysis.
Scroll up a little bit.
Oh yeah, of course. So you can see who it is. Yeah, there you go. I can zoom into just so you can see the names and everything. This is kind of the issue here, right? We have conflicting conclusions coming from the same data. These meta-analyses often take numbers from the same studies. Sometimes not. Sometimes they take them from completely different studies. That's why you mentioned the 64 turned to 63 different studies that they were now combining the data for. But nonetheless, it's not conclusive. Ivermectin is not conclusively useful. And if we were to level the playing ground and let's just say like every single study we looked at today is equally valid, equally factual, we'd have an issue of contradictions. Somebody is either incorrect or in good faith or lying, and that's why I bring things up like that writer of the other meta-analysis being part of a group with a biased reason to push ivermectin. Now, could it be that he's also he's selling something, but he's also correct? That is possible. I'm just saying it's food for thought.
Scroll down.
Sure.
Keep scrolling.
You want the full text? Gets a little long for something to read in the middle of the conversation. So we can always revisit, but if you want, I can go down further.
I had a thought and I don't remember what it was because I'm old and tired and have a headache.
You are old. No, you're absolutely right that people cherry pick data. That's
right.
That's 100% correct.
And this thing I just pulled up, so I don't claim to know if this is, necessarily a.
Can you send that to me in the chat?
Sure.
No, like I said, ivermectin specifically is not a hill I'm going to die on.
Sure.
It's the fact that we have zero interest in treatment. If you really break it down.
Yeah. I mean, my argument against that has always been the antivirals that have been getting developed. The ones that I believe they're derived from similar treatments that have been used for HIV in the past decade. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on that.
Well, that makes sense. And HIV research in particular has kind of a miniature moon landing in that it had far-reaching effects in the medical world because of how much was uncovered and then used elsewhere, because it's such a difficult and complicated thing.
Wait, go back up a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were reading off of my screen.
Nope, back, down. Like one click up. There we go.
There you go.
Oh, that's not what I wanted. Hold on.
I'll go find what you want. Well, while you're looking at that, go away, Stephen, and let me share something. While he's looking at you send him the link. He'll figure it out.
Yeah. I got. Yeah, look at you on screen. Sorry.
How do I go to chats? Hold on. I'm old. God. Here we go. I got it.
Wait. Here we go.
Okay. Well, this is another one of the things that you sent me that annoyed me. Mm-hmm. Because this is a Time article about America's frontline doctors.
Are we going to Time?
Yeah, we are for a second here.
There's a good reason for it. They talk about someone important.
But so for anyone who doesn't know, America's Frontline Doctors were a group early on, like late last year, around November, December, that were testifying before Congress and were talking about ivermectin. And they're kind of the ones who put it in the public conversation. This isn't an article. This is a hit piece. Okay. So you talk about questioning motives. Just right off the bat, as a political junkie and someone who reads and writes a lot, this isn't an article. This is a hit piece. And I mean, the first thing that jumps out at me right here at the beginning is how insidious they make it sound that this guy was charged $90 for a telemedicine appointment. Like, Vera, babe, have you never gone to a doctor? That's not that abnormal. That's not ridiculous of a price. Yeah, they're charging you because you're having a consult with a doctor. I mean, maybe it costs you $20 if you have really good insurance, but some insurances don't cover telemedicine. And so then you're paying the complete out-of-pocket fee, which $100 or almost $100 cash is pretty typical for a doctor's consult or a doctor's visit. So right off the bat, you're trying to make these people sound like money grubbers for a perfectly standard fee while you're ignoring the Pfizer, Merck, etc. with multi-billion-dollar contracts. This is absurd. That's what's absolutely nuts. And the other thing that jumped out at me is so so here, and then there's another example of someone who couldn't get in touch with them. So like this guy, he scheduled the telemedicine appointment. They charged him. Again, that's also perfect. I go in for procedures all the time and I pay ahead of time. That's the way they work. And he couldn't get in. Well, yeah, because this group is being overwhelmed. Because as Sam said, we have no interest in treatment. So there's about 500 doctors in a population of 330 million that are putting their necks on the line to talk about treatment when it has become completely politicized. And again, so now instead of talking about the doctors or the medicine, they immediately go into this right-wing group. Okay, well, what that makes me worry about and think about is right after, wait, when was this? Is it right after the election, Sam, where you talked about this group that was posting Trump donors and their addresses? So like, even if you,
donor.watch, yeah, you can get the app.
So even if you'd given $20 to the Trump campaign, you were suddenly a right-wing extremist. Cap, get out of there, you stupid dog, stop eating the litter. What is wrong with you?
Ugh.
You're disgusting. So again, stupidly politicized. Okay, so what if they are part of right-wing causes? This shouldn't be a right-wing issue, for F's sake.
But it has become one, and everyone that's pushing ivermectin is linking back to this. And America's Frontline, now they weren't just charging $90 for the consultation; they were charging upwards of $700 for a pill that you say costs $1.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we can agree that money is at the base of a lot of this,
right?
And politics is the base of a lot of this. Because imagine Trump won in January, or I guess November ish. We would still have the vaccine push, and it would be blue fighting back against red versus red fighting back against blue. We know
that's not even a thought experiment, because they were saying at the time, I'm not going to take it. I don't trust something developed under the Trump administration. I mean, in their own words, this isn't a thought experiment.
Yeah. The vaccine push was started with warp speed and was hijacked by the new administration because it was what was there. But I'm back in your article here, and I was just kind of perusing through. So even though that it showed a reduction of all-cause mortality rates, however, the authors caution. So these are the things that bother me with these studies. So I've made a living reading studies and writing studies, and going through the data and seeing the methods, seeing the results of the study, and then seeing a conclusion that contradicts everything that went on in the study. And your little meta-analysis you sent me, I gave one sentence out of it after a probably 2-minute perusal while I was listening through the other ear on a conversation, and already saw them reneging on what they're going for with the entire goal of the paper, but trying to kind of, I don't know, trying to fly under the radar to some degree. Yeah, they kind of said this, and the data shows this, but they expressed some caution along the way.
Well, they said it was a low quality of evidence, which means there's a very small sample size.
That's all we have with clinical trials.
Right. Well, we've had high quality of evidence in vitro studies, and those showed nothing. So we've been cherry picking.
The next step is you got to look at the steps of scientific research. In vitro studies is the first step.
Sure.
Now we need long-term clinical trials, which first of all we don't have time for, and the second, and also we have contradiction in those in vitro studies. So you gave me some that showed negative, and I gave you some that showed positive.
Yep. The one you showed me didn't contradict mine. They were parallel. Yours showed positive effects at a certain concentration. Mine described how much dosage was needed in human to reach
scroll down in that, and it showed positive effects in actual real life trials in conjunction with the other drugs.
Right, which means we don't know if the medication is actually functioning as an antiviral.
Except that they're pulling the plug on both drugs because they were used in conjunction with the other. So
Well, both drugs have been shown in their own, like you said, you criticized that they were using the vacuum, but I'm going to continue defending that usage because it's supposedly supposed to work as a antiviral, which we can test in a vacuum, unlike other types of treatment. We can see if it's actually doing that. And we haven't seen it in vitro. So I can kind of see the difficulty of
we have seen it in vitro.
But we didn't. Well, we saw it working in vitro at dosages that humans cannot take. So
but we saw it in real life in doses we can take.
With no evidence.
In conjunction with other drugs.
Without any quality evidence that either drug was working as an antiviral. Just that they were getting better through some function, but not that it was working as an antiviral.
It doesn't matter if it works exactly like they want it to. It just matters that it works.
It matters a lot because people are taking this medication by itself. And again, we need to know what medication is actually doing it and what the effects are. I could. And again, we're looking
at this. This is where the debate's going to get a little heated because
sure.
we're looking at they're forced to take it, and this is where the not filling prescriptions comes in. We're forced to take it by itself because if your doctor could say you can have a cocktail of ivermectin and HCQ, and why don't you take some vitamin D, and why don't you take some some zinc, and maybe some quercetin at the time, and that's your cocktail you need to take. People would do it, but because they're denied all of those things from their doctor, they're going to go, "Oh, I'm going to take the one that is most poo-pooed by the media.
I'm going to take the one I've heard about because this is what everyone's talking about." Because
yeah, exactly. Political. Oh, it must be the miracle cure. And the fact of the matter is there is no miracle cure, and if you treat it that way scientifically or in the public, it's going to end up with the same result. You're going to get a bunch of people that are going to go on the QAnon bandwagon and get in there and take horse dewormer and go blind. And that's the problem. That's my problem. It's not the fact that one works or one doesn't. It's the fact that we're forcing people into a situation where they have to go blind into something they have no clue about.
I don't think we're forcing people to go blind. Saying that we're forcing people to go blind implies that ivermectin would have helped in the first place, which I don't think it would have.
Go blind in the literal sense, as in they're going in with no information.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right. Okay. Your thing is an issue of suppression information, which, I mean, again, with again, I know it's very narrow. I know you're not trying to die on the ivermectin hill, but just because it's, what we're kind of started at, it's easy to talk about one thing at a time. I mean, ivermectin has lots of meta-analysis out there, and they have different opinions on which studies actually have good quality of evidence in them, right? I mean, a meta-analysis is attempting to get a bunch of small questionable studies and present them as if they're one contiguous sample size. That's what the one you quote, cited did. And again, that's the one I'm still questioning because they're associated with a British company that is pushing ivermectin. I mean, they're the one group that has taken that conclusion from that meta-analysis, and it's a global thing. Japan has not approved the use of ivermectin. I don't know where that myth came from. I think there was a Japanese person that said it, but he was not a part of any sort of government entity in Japan. The Japanese government has not approved the usage of ivermectin at any point.
Well, hold on. So again, that's part of the slippery language that I don't like. Sure. That's driving me crazy, because you see that a lot here is, I think it was part of the Merck claim, and I think it was reiterated in this Time article. The FDA has not approved. Well, hold on. Nobody's saying they have approved ivermectin, but just because it hasn't been approved for use against COVID doesn't mean it can't be used, and frankly doesn't mean it shouldn't be used if a doctor thinks it can be prescribed safely, which, considering the billions of people who have used it, yeah, it can be prescribed safely, and that it might help reduce the severity of the illness in conjunction with other things.
You want to put things ad hominem and talk about connections. Let's talk about the FDA.
Dun 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 dun.
Dun dun dun. Right. Hold on. Let me get something here.
Yeah. While you're grabbing that, just one point: the Japanese government, that actually was a huge talking point for ivermectin. It went viral on social media. Maybe it's I mean that's not necessarily a doctor saying it, but it kind of comes into how people are pushing these ideas. People are not coming out here and saying like, hey, maybe we should study ivermectin more. They're saying, give me my ivermectin. Look, the Japanese government approved of it. It went huge all over social media. And it was just, Joe Rogan actually quoted that on his podcast at one point too, which was hilarious. He said the Japanese government has approved of the use of ivermectin to defend his usage of it. But he had prescribed from a doctor, and he was mistaken about the Japanese government actually approving the drug for use with COVID.
Well, you said something that this is the hill I will die on. Give me my ivermectin. Yeah, this is the hill I will die on. Bodily autonomy. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, you're not a free individual. And right now, we do not have bodily autonomy. People are being forced to take these vaccines, which, I mean, we haven't even gotten into those yet. People are being forced to take these vaccines or lose their jobs or, be restricted in their movements. People are not being allowed to choose for themselves what treatment protocols they want to follow, et cetera, and so forth. This is the hill that not only I'll die on, I think we all should. And this is one of the things that infuriates me about our political debates is they seldom talk about what they really should talk about. So, the reason all my friends on the left hate me is because I keep pointing out how many of the things that they hate Trump about that Obama did, or was a holdover from Obama, and then flip that. The people on the right can't stand it when I point out, hey, remember when you were complaining during the Obama administration about these things? Yeah, the things that Trump is doing, because it's not about the philosophical principles. It's about the
okay, ignore the one on the bottom, by the way, because that was the right-wing propaganda. But the first the first three are, I actually fact checked. They're all correct, and they're actually proud about it on their websites. So
yeah, I love the last one though.
Ignore the last one because that was the propaganda. But the first three are actually all correct. So you want
it's not propaganda, it's a joke. Come on.
You want connections. FDA to Pfizer, FDA to Moderna, Reuters to Pfizer.
Well, it's exactly what Ike warned us about 60 years ago when he talked about the military industrial complex. It wasn't just about the military. Okay. No, people need to go back and listen to that speech, because it's a phenomenal speech. That he was talking more generally about that partnership between those two things that Stephen started off saying that he's distrustful of: big government, big corporations. So what happens when they come together and they agree?
Yeah.
Are y'all familiar with Schmachtenberger?
That's a beautiful name. I have no idea.
Daniel Schmachtenberger. Okay, so he talks about living in a free world. There are requirements, and it requires a free market and free individuals and a government. But you need the people to check the government to check the markets, and the markets to check the people. And so there's a triangle that goes there. But what we ended up with in this recent debacle, and it's been building way before COVID, especially with the social media issue, is we have a market that checks the government, and now we're starting to have a government that checks the people. And so we've got a reversal of this free enterprise. And that's my big worry. And we see a lot of the propaganda that surrounds it, in which we've been talking about. And, we've been bickering about ivermectin right now, but it's really, realistically, it comes down to the propaganda. what do you believe? What do you not believe? Who do you trust? And frankly, I don't trust anybody. But
I mean, that much I can mostly agree with.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, you know, it is an issue of trusting, I mean, somebody because they're pushing something that seems oppositional to somebody else you distrust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very dangerous thing to slide down. And you know, and when I, you know, and when I get into kind of trying to when I try to get into the affiliations these different groups have, it's not me trying to say, well, like, let's follow the World Health Organization and listen to what the CDC says, no matter what they say. You know, my point is that this thing is insidious in all kinds of places. It doesn't always have to be the organization that happens to be holding the most power at the moment. That's often the most dangerous thing. But I mean, I think Heath, you get really worried about groups like Antifa, and what are they? But very much, you know, I mean, especially when they started, they're very much underdogs that were trying to fight against what they felt was this oppressive message that they felt was wrong. And so when you see another group doing that, I mean, it can be a grassroots movement that is acting in good faith, but oftentimes it can be something really insidious.
Well, and you know, I would disagree with your characterization there, obviously, but it's irrelevant because there's also a tail wagging the dog situation here, and you could see it in the Tea Party. That, you know, if you listen to any right-wing commentary, you'll hear quite a few of them talking about the collapse of the Tea Party and what the heck happened to the Tea Party, and it was there was I don't have this handy because, you know, this isn't what we're going to talk about, but there's an FBI report out recently about the organization of the summer riots and the connections. So even if you start off well-intentioned, if your actions are dubious and you're not cognizant of how power corrupts and how the powerful are corrupting, then you will have that organization, that movement, co-opted by people for their own ends, which is how the Tea Party died. Is, you know, the Tea Party started off as a grassroots thing and then became Tea Party Inc., right? And Conservative News Inc., and people co-opting it to sell their books and sell their podcasts and all this, you know, and same thing with Antifa and BLM is, you know, people get all mad if you question BLM, and, you know, so you have to make the distinction. And me and Sam have tried to have, what we're talking about is BLM Inc., you know, because whatever you think about the ideas, the problem here is it has been co-opted by people trying to push their own ends.
Well, I'm going to piss both of you off, I think.
Yay.
So you brought up Antifa, and Heath tried to downplay the right-wing side of it. And there's a little bit of truth to both of it. But Heath, I'm sorry, it's the right-wing movements in opposition. It's because they got no balls. There is no go out there and do something. There's just, get off my lawn. I'm tired of this. Wham, 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 wham. And on the left wing, you got Antifa, who have no direction. If you really, really, really break it down, we are anti-fascist. Well, what's fascist? That thing we don't like. Let's blow it up. So realistically, yeah, they both are stupid, but when you look at what's actually going to cause harm, I don't know. They cause harm in a different way, I think, is really the way it works out.
Yeah, and you know, with your critiques of the Tea Party, I would say that it's concerning that groups like America's Frontline Doctors are selling telehealth, telehealth services that are colored by a very particular political, I won't call it an agenda, I'll just call it a bias, a potential political bias, associations with Tea Party members. Their founder was arrested for participating in the Capitol Hill riots. I mean, again, this is not me just trying to say like these people are associated with certain political movements, so therefore like they don't get to have an opinion. But when you kind of take it all together, I don't think we can just take that at face value. In the same way that you're concerned about different organizations in government being connected to different corporations, or different individuals being connected to international, like foreign governments, that might not be looking out for our best interests. I think that whether it's in good faith or bad, there's something there to be said about all these alternative health solutions coming from groups with very particular political agendas.
So be specific about the frontline doctors.
Sure.
Political agenda, because you said their founder was part of the riots or whatever. Sure. Be very specific, because I'm trying to actually, this is a curiosity of mine.
Yeah.
What do they actually benefit from this other than their own fame, and which other than a few figures you don't get any recognition.
Right. So this is my take on it. I feel like they're anti-vaccination, and this is now we're getting into conjecture, right?
Okay, so I'm gonna actually cut you off there, because the frontline doctors were a part of this movement way before the vaccines came out.
They were.
Yeah, they were.
They were. No, say they were.
Yeah,
I'm affirming. Yeah, I'm affirming. Yeah, they were. No, they were, and it's not.
And if you really want to break it down, if Trump had won, they would be on Trump's side. So would they be vaxxers or would they be anti-vaxxers? So
who knows?
Yeah. Good question. That's a good question. For me, it feels like they're working for a bottom line to line their pockets. Ultimately, I don't know if the politics.
But no, to be specific, how so?
How so? They're selling telehealth services that benefit from people not getting vaccinated and seeking out medications that are not approved for usage, not necessarily whether by the FDA or whatever other governing body would prevent them from getting the medication they want.
But their treatment protocols are free online.
The treatment protocols are free online, and they sell the treatments that are part of the treatment protocol.
Yeah, but they also list them. You can download a PDF from these people, or just go onto their websites and they'll say, this is the cocktail we recommend. That's how I found out about them.
Right.
It was, and they listed, this is what we recommend prophylactically. This is what we recommend within X amount of days of infection. This is what we recommend for, X Y amount of days after confirmed infection. So yeah, they may be selling it, but they're also providing information where you don't have to buy it from them.
But also we're tracking the grift here too. What's the bigger grift? Sanjay Gupta on CNN, or the people who have been blacklisted on every medical avenue they had to practice regularly, so they're doing it online and can do it through telehealth. So
I don't think it has to be an either or. I guess if I could draw an allegory, if this makes sense, when you talk to someone that tells you that you can cure your cancer with healing crystals and negative ions, do you have to buy those? Joke. I mean, do you have to buy those products from them? I mean, that grift is very important either way, whether or not you buy it from. Well, not every single person buys it from that exact person that told them about it. I mean, how many places can you get ivermectin from legally and safely?
Well, if you get it prescribed from your doctor, theoretically, any pharmacy.
Right. But I feel like America's Frontline knows that not every pharmacy is going to actually give it to you when you get to the pharmacist.
Well,
so what if I have a disease that ivermectin is actually a good cure for, and I get a prescription from my doctor and I go to the pharmacy and they won't prescribe it because of the COVID rules?
Yeah. What if I have a tiny catfish stuck? What if I have a tiny catfish stuck in my penis and I'm just, screwed?
That is a myth.
That is not a myth.
That's a funny myth, but there's been no.
It's not a catfish. It's a different kind of fish.
It's like an eel. It's like a little eel looking thing. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe okay, so what if I am subject to river blindness and I'm going to get my ivermectin and they won't give it to me and I get river blindness? Can I sue?
I would surely hope so. And I hope you go to the media so I can see one example of this out there.
Even if you get one example, it would be anecdote. And I'm a data guy, so I don't go with
that's
anecdote.
Fair. That's fair. It would be anecdotal, but I think that would be an alarming anecdote if someone actually had, if they had a prescription for ivermectin that was actually for a purpose approved by the FDA. There should be like zero barriers now, and they still don't get that prescription filled.
Is that specified on the prescription though?
Well, hold on. That's a problem in and of itself, because even on the FDA's own website, in their FAQ, they explain how medicine can be used off-label and why it's used off-label, which it is all the time. That's all we're talking about here, is an off-label use of an approved drug, which happens all the freaking time. But for this issue, it is political, and so we have lost our bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I can see that. I won't deny that these things have been, this entire pandemic has been politicized, which I think we could all agree is a terrible thing. People are dying and we're making political games out of it. But on top of the fact that's politicized, I do think, whether or not it's an overreaction, I do think that if there's a concern that a particular medication is being overprescribed for things people don't need them for, there can be a sort of heightened paranoia over the people giving out that medication. Think about the opioid overprescriptions. People died, and we're feeling those effects a decade later.
Well, yeah, but we're also feeling the overreaction to it of people with legitimate pain issues can no longer get prescriptions because doctors just won't prescribe it because it's not worth the risk to them.
But you can't poop.
I know I can't poop, but I also can't do anything all day because
I took them for 2 days with this damn shoulder surgery and can't poop. No, okay, so in the beginning of all this, I want to kind of go back to one thing. When we were talking about masks or lockdowns or whatever intervention you want to talk about, any intervention we threw out there, if it saves one life, was the mantra, right?
Which is stupid.
Which is stupid. But so let's take the effect, the possible effect of these repurposed drugs, whether it's ivermectin, HCQ, or any other drug out there, and let's prescribe a 10% success rate, right? Maybe 10%, which it's actually somewhere around 50 to 60% according to the literature. And even the negative literature puts it about 50%.
I don't think it did.
No, it did about 50%. And we're talking about real world, not in vitro. And
real world, we haven't had it tested by itself.
We've got.
I would die on that damn stupid hill.
Okay. But again, I left it open to all of these things, not by itself. So a cocktail, right? Okay. So if a cocktail of these things, antiviral, antihistamine, anti-inflammatory, taken together, and there was an Italy study in a nursing home where they used over-the-counter medicine, and it had an effect. So say it's about 50 to 60%, but we're going to say 10%. 10% of how many people died?
About 700,000 now, I think.
700,000 in the United States. 10% of that is what?
I don't know. He's the Asian. Ask him.
Yeah. That's easy math. Come on. Yeah. 70,000 people, right? 70,000 people is still alive. So if you want to give me we need to wear a mask because it reduces, even though we know it's a very minute, or if you want to give me whatever statistic about social distancing or any of that, which I actually agree with, but it's about reducing. If we can use a medication to reduce, why are we not using it? That's my point. Even if it's just freaking 5%, 10%, 15%, and it's harmless, why are we not using it?
Okay.
It's okay. So it is harmful at a certain dose, but a prescription that your doctor gives you will not be that dose.
Right. Okay.
No.
Okay. So assuming we're not taking the Bird Group recommendation to take it weekly for your whole life for prevention, this is a treatment after you've contracted COVID.
Mm-hmm. Early treatment.
Early treatment. As soon as you realize you've contracted COVID, am I okay with prescribing and this is for the sake of argument, so we can actually get into the actual meat of the subject. I'll just we'll say that this is 10% effective. I would say that it makes as much sense, or actually it makes sense to go to that if you're willing to get vaccinated as well, because we have to be consistent there.
Okay, what if you've already had disease?
If you're had disease, that's actually been an interesting subject. I know there's emerging research on that, so I'm not willing to take a stance on that until we know more about it. I know the initial research was very, very positive for the immunity we get and the antibodies we get from being infected. Now there's possible thoughts the other way, but that's not going to be conclusive for a long time. And
there's actually robust evidence, but we'll go over that.
There's been
I'm not going to throw something that you haven't studied yet.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with the idea of of natural immunity, until I know more about it. So, so if you're vaccinated or you otherwise have some sort of immunity that you possess, then the next step being to try a drug for yourself after you've contracted COVID, a cocktail that seemed to work on 50% of other people. I can see that being your prerogative, but or 10%, as you say.
Yeah, well, yeah, the 10%, I try to make it specific to you have COVID and you're going in, you get tested positive, and you're starting some sort of treatment protocol. Versus, no, we're not talking prevention right now.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking treatment, and the fact that these things can't be used for treatment is the beef.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you on a theoretical level of if these things have a chance of working, we should use them, right? Especially with how minimal the risks are. I think the crux of the argument and the thing that is not easily agreed upon, especially considering the contradicting studies all from different peer-reviewed literature, and even pre-published works, is that it is contradictory whether or not it is actually helpful. So these sources that I have personally seen so far that indicate these have a positive effect at all, to me, have been unconvincing. And that's why I had that stance on that. It's not that I wouldn't want to allow someone to use a treatment that has a 10% chance of working. I don't believe it even has a 10% chance of working. I think that's why it's a disagreement.
Okay, so I guess where I'd go after that is what treatments that you know of that you've studied have a chance of working.
Right, and that's the difficult thing. I mean, there's been a lot of different medications that have been tried to varying efficacy, and it is a tragic part of this issue. Now, if you're going to get into, should you try what's available now versus something that you think may have a chance, and it's kind of a shot in the dark, I think that starts going into a whole different world of medical ethics, right? If your doctor can prescribe you something that they believe has zero efficacy.
You should be allowed, right? I mean, we're allowed chemo that can fuck you up, right?
Yeah, but I can't just ask for chemo whenever I want. Obviously, that's a lot more dangerous than Ivermectin.
No, you can ask for chemo when you have cancer, though.
Right.
So can you ask for a drug when you have COVID? That's the question.
Well, we know chemo works on cancer,
but it also fucks you up. So.
Right. But we also know it works, is what I'm saying. And so if you believe these treatments work on COVID, I understand the desire to have that treatment available to you. I just think that there's a bit of a, at least for some people, I think there's a bit of kind of a misalignment on what the argument actually is. I don't think people are saying you don't have the right to take this risk. I think it's people saying this will do nothing for you, and therefore there's zero justification for having it. And that's something that you can disagree on if what you think from the literature you've read is that it can have an effect, however minute or great, depending on where you sit with this. But
so do you think there should be significant funding put towards actually studying the effectiveness of ivermectin? Because we're getting stuff from around the world. Right. We're not getting anything from the United States.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's my beef, is there's no focus on treatment at all.
Well, I think China. Well, now I'm not sure if they worked with ivermectin, but HCQ, China definitely worked with, and it was.
You said China. I said the States.
Right. No. Yeah. The reason I bring that up was the reason I brought up China was that their research fizzled out before it even reached most of the Western world. I think it was them. There's like one study in France that was that seemed effective, and after that, it was just study after study that was not getting the same results anymore, and it fizzled out. Ivermectin, from what I've seen of it, and from what I've seen of the new analyses that come out over the days, is that the promises of this actually working at all against COVID are fizzling out. So whether or not we should receive funding, I mean, if there's, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. If there is a significant reason to justify that funding, if there's still that hope that this will work, I won't say that we should not have funding just because it's not a popular topic. I just think that that isn't necessarily the only reason why this might not be getting funding. It might not be. It might just be a dead end, and that could be a justification as well.
Well, this goes back to the HCQ discussion too, because I remember early on in this, someone put up a small little meta-analysis and was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I read it, and it was a bunch of small clinical trials that showed some good results in some ways. And I was like, well, what you see from this, if this is all that's available, looks promising, needs more research. That's what I saw from it. And you saw a bunch of people going on there. Yeah, it doesn't work. Yay, go Biden, whatever, blah, woo. And I was like, no, this shows that we need to look at it a little bit more. And you didn't see it anymore because it was connected to the red side, and it became political, and all of a sudden HCQ was a demon.
Because a lady in Arizona totally didn't murder her husband with it.
What? I don't know this story.
You don't remember this?
No.
The story, because Trump brought it up like in that summer, I think, is when he brought it up. And supposedly a woman gave fish tank cleaner to her husband.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because it had it in it. And then it turned out after the fact, after CNN et al. Had gone on reporting about this man died because this woman heard Trump talk about HCQ and saw that it was in fish tank cleaner and gave it to her husband. Turns out the police then started looking into her because there were questionable circumstances surrounding this story. Yeah, but that didn't stop the stupid politicization of it and the media running rampant with it. And to me, that's so Stephen, you mentioned that you didn't think anyone was specifically saying you can't do this. To me, when you have an overwhelming information campaign to suppress something, that's just smiley face fascism. Okay, yeah, technically no one is denying this, but they're putting so much social and political pressure on you that they are effectively denying you. So what's the difference?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I've always thought the social and political pressure has not been the right way to go about this at all, and that's going to be an issue with every issue, right? So I do see your point on that. I just think we need to also consider, and if this happens on with any problem on both sides of things, there's always the people that are going to politicize it. There's people that don't understand the issue and are going to use social pressure and just shame people, make jokes, belittle people, and not actually have their own opinion about it. But ultimately, once you kind of get through all that garbage, there is still an underlying truth that I think we all want to get to. And so, yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with you on that. A lot of people's behaviors. I mean, I had a lot of issues with people early on with the vaccine that were getting vaccinated and going out and partying, and putting themselves in huge groups of people and putting themselves at high risk of still catching COVID and giving it to other people, especially when we had no idea how transmittable the disease was at that point.
Which we do now.
Right. But at that point, it was a complete mystery, and which made it, a completely murky danger, right, that they're putting themselves in. This did not make me want to discourage people from getting the vaccine, however, not for that. I mean, somebody getting the vaccine for the wrong reasons and acting in a way that is still dangerous is not, that's kind of a guilt by association at that point, right? So I kind of get what you're going after there. And I both agree with it, but also think that, we shouldn't kind of let that color how we view things. I mean, just as an example, there was a news story back just last month in Arkansas. There was a small jail in Arkansas where is a county jail where 3 inmates reported that they were given ivermectin against their knowledge. They were told to they were told to take this medication that was supposed to help them with COVID. They were not told what it was. They were just told to take it. And it turned out to be ivermectin. And it's become a big deal because, again, this issue has become politicized. And, this was a conservative area that felt that ivermectin is the way to go. And they were pushing it against people's will. I'm not going to use that as evidence that ivermectin doesn't work because those are 2 different issues. But it's just an example of, how
if you got to be consistent, we would say that that was wrong as well because they were given a drug without their knowledge.
It's the other side of the coin of nurses who, a few months ago were the real heroes and are now being fired because they don't want to take one of the vaccines. Yeah, it's just the other side of the coin of it. Yeah,
exactly. It's, and again, as someone that encourages people to get the vaccine, I don't think we should have vaccine mandates. That for me is the wrong way to approach the issue.
You either have bodily autonomy or you don't. It's the same principle as free speech. It's why the ACLU, when it was actually the Civil Liberties Union, why they once defended the KKK's right to have a rally, because anyone has a right to have a rally. Even if you're a douchebag who has abhorrent thoughts, well, you're still protected. Freedom means you're free to be a retard. Am I allowed to say that?
No, well, no, not technically.
Okay.
You're not monetizing your video, right?
No, not yet.
I don't know. Can you
not for another 984 subscribers.
Okay, don't say anything too terrible. Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult issue, and I know we can't come to a consensus on how we feel about a particular drug or a particular vaccine or maybe we can, but if we happen to already align on it. But I guess kind of the underlying thing here is we're able to kind of agree with each other in a lot of ways, philosophically, right, and ethically, but still disagree on what to do about specific things. And I think that does come down to conflicting data being given by conflicting groups with conflicting conclusions. Mm-hmm. So we're all kind of acting in a way that's consistent, but agreeing with different conclusions in terms of, how dangerous is this drug? Is this drug effective? Things like that. It seems to be where the disagreements are. And those are things that don't really get fixed overnight.
And frankly, when it comes right down to it, are discussions you should be having with your doctor anyway.
And doctors that are free to talk.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, because again, we brought up the way the hospital system works, and they can't give certain advice because again, all it takes is one to lose your job. Anecdotally, I go to a cardiologist every year because I have a heart condition, and he agrees with me on the vaccine and myocarditis and why I'm probably a higher percentage than the population data suggests. But will he sign a medical waiver? Nope. Because then he's putting his name on it. So, where do we go from there? He thinks this one thing, but he won't do it, which is kind of cowardly. So I might find a new cardiologist, but it is what it is. But if we're looking at risk, I mean, you can buy this over the counter.
Yeah, I'd be careful with that stuff.
Well, and Heath sent something to me not that long ago about aspirin, and I talked to a doctor shortly after, and it's legit. I mean,
yeah, we made a joke a few episodes ago because there was a article out of Israel I saw indicating that aspirin might reduce the symptoms of COVID. And I joked that, so, any second now CNN's going to start calling it willow bark and making fun of the idiots who are chewing on willow bark. And then all of a sudden this article comes across that is actually recommending, I think it was from the New York Times, that doctors are now recommending you stop taking low dose aspirin.
Oh crap. Well, I mean,
the moral of the story is it turned out to be legit. It turned out to be something that had predated COVID.
Yeah. So this is a good and bad. This is a good and bad story, because it's something that the medical community has been debating for a long time, but it took a political contradiction for it to be put in the mainstream. It took the fact that it could be have some efficacy against COVID for it to be poo-pooed by the medical community, finally, by the AMA, which doctors actually will go every time they see AMA because it's a bureaucratic organization now. So, a good came out of the bad. Everything that could help with COVID is being crushed on. But it's something, this one particular thing was something that the medical community was trying to crush on from the beginning. So crush, and not in a I love you crush, but crush is in smash under your foot crush.
How long had they been talking about it? And it just,
this guy's been retired for 20 years. So he's, they were talking about, but before that, so 90s.
I could have sworn low dose aspirin was like not recommended for just anybody to be taking long term for a long time now.
Not just anybody, but I think the recommendation has long been that if you're over a certain age or in a certain risk category, it's recommended that you take low dose aspirin every day.
I was on full dose aspirin.
How big a company is Bayer?
Yeah, so Pfizer actually outproduced Bayer in the lobby category. Here is what happened. No, but it makes sense, because if we look at COVID as what it is, it's a bloodborne illness. It's not a respiratory illness, and the inflammation of the blood vessels. And I don't know how familiar you are with what we've talked about on our previous episodes, but we went over the long haul effects of COVID and what's come out of that. And the inflammation of the blood vessels is really the cause of a lot of the long haul effects. So if you look at something like aspirin, which is a blood thinner, that's going to mobilize everything that is trying to deposit in those blood vessels. So the monocytes that are trying to deposit on the walls of the blood vessels are going to be mobilized. So they're going to keep flowing in the system and eventually die, versus actually depositing and causing inflammation on the blood vessels. So aspirin, it just makes sense that it's going to alleviate symptoms, right? It may not cure anything, but it's going to keep things flowing. So it alleviates symptoms.
Well, which is important, because if we're crying out loud, when you have as many breakthrough cases as we're now seeing, it's highly probable that at some point in your life, you're going to get COVID, in the same way that it is highly probable that at some point in your life, you are going to get influenza. You're going to catch the influenza virus. It's going to happen. Well, with this particular virus, if it seems like those long haul symptoms are correlated, if not directly caused by the severity of the illness. So why the heck aren't we talking more about treatment with when, even if you're vaccinated, you still have a chance of getting the disease? And if you want to make sure you don't have those long haul systems, then as Rogan talked about, you want to throw the kitchen sink at it. So he was 4 or 5 days after he tested positive, he tested negative because he threw the kitchen sink at it. Now, it probably also in some degree is because he's a younger, healthy guy. But I mean, I don't see to me, you still want to throw the kitchen sink at it, because as someone who's been living with chronic pain for 17 years, you don't want to live. If you're a younger, healthy person, you should still be concerned, because you don't want to live 20, 40, 60 years with some of these long haul problems.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the kitchen sink with Rogan, because he cited a lot of things that that are being used to treat him, and some of those things are actually I don't know 100% for sure if they're approved for usage in the U.S., but they're being used in other first world countries. Japan is using monoclonal antibody drugs. I think they're using 2 different antibody drugs. So, I mean, it's not like treatments are being completely ignored at this stage. I can't speak to exactly which.
Well, no, you're correct around the world, but you are incorrect in the United States. Again, I've been through it. They say you tested positive for COVID, stay home alone. That's your treatment. Until you get so severe you have to go into a hospital, and then they put you on a ventilator. But stay home alone. So realistically, we have to look to these other countries to actually get our data, because we have nothing for the States.
Okay.
Nothing anybody's willing to report.
So it looks like Japan was the first to approve Ronapreve, which was the monoclonal antibodies that Rogan got. It has been licensed for emergency use in the United States. Donald Trump received it when he was sick.
Well, and that's something I've brought up that annoys the crap out of me is I watch football on Sunday, and every other commercial is a drug commercial of some sort. Either for your wang or your heart.
I was gonna say, you got your ED, buddy.
Yeah. So every other drug, he got that. Wasn't it like September-ish that it was reported that he had contracted COVID, and then he was successfully treated, and then everyone just ignored it. And I was like, wait a minute, the president of the United States just successfully treated COVID with this stuff. How come I'm not seeing commercials for that during halftime? Why does no one seem interested in this stuff?
Because it doesn't make as much money as ED, buddy.
I guess not. Well,
that's actually not a wrong point when it comes to ED medication at all.
Yeah, I wasn't joking.
We men have our priorities. But
I'm dying. No, keep going. Keep going. Oh,
we're doomed.
Yeah,
we're doomed.
Yeah, I think so. I think I can agree with you on the importance of looking for as many treatments as possible. My issues with ivermectin and HCQ in particular are very specific to those things. So I'm not necessarily pushing for these antibody treatments to become more available. I don't see an issue with that. Or looking for other treatments in general for people that have a higher risk with vaccinations. People with you talk about heart conditions. We have people with immunodeficiency issues that can't risk a vaccine. There's all kinds of reasons that we can't just rely on these things. So yeah, I don't.
I guess my position would be when it comes to the other treatments that you don't agree with, is a doctor should be able to prescribe them, and a pharmacy should fulfill that prescription if there is no other better treatment available. And right now, we don't have another treatment available. So as long if it's 10%, it's the best we got. And because it's become political, they can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember which one of these cases it was, again, anecdotal, but one of these cases that I mentioned of someone who took one of these ivermectin cocktails, one of these treatment regimens, he talked to the hospital and they said, well, we only have one dose of the monoclonal antibodies, so we can't give that out unless it's literally life or death. So, I mean, yeah, what other options do you have if you have tested positive? And do you have bodily autonomy or do you not? Apparently you only have bodily autonomy if you are living in a tent in San Francisco surrounded by hypodermic needles.
Well, I mean, on the subject of opioids, it is kind of a historical footprint, right? And we had a physician that was prosecuted for overprescribing opioids to people. Was that right? Because ultimately, if we give people the right, to have the bodily autonomy to get whatever they want prescribed from their doctor, if there's no other potential treatment for that issue, we would also have to accept that someone could just go to a doctor, as long as they don't identify something very nefarious, if they're selling it or just addicted, if they're in pain, they'd have to prescribe it.
Well, we have schedules for that, though. We have Schedule 1 drugs, we have Schedule 2 drugs, we have Schedule 3 drugs. Sure. And as far as I know, it takes a pretty damn good dose of ivermectin to go blind. So as long as you're getting the prescribed dose within a certain range, then you can't compare it to an opioid, because an opioid, it can be addictive at a very small dose.
Okay, so I mean, I shouldn't conflate both your opinions to be the same as each other.
You don't get addicted to ivermectin.
Right, of course. I feel like Heath's point is, though, that bodily autonomy should not just be. I could be wrong, but it seems like it's kind of an all or nothing thing here, where whether it's ivermectin or cannabis is Schedule 1. Whether it's ivermectin or cannabis, we should be able to have it prescribed to us as much as we'd like. And I
actually agree with cannabis. So
I do too. That's my point of mentioning the fact that it's a Schedule 1 drug for some reason.
Speaking of which, I'm going to rub a little on my neck right now because my stupid head still won't stop hurting. Not as much as you like, but so one of the things we see all the time on this show that nobody watches is there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Everything, and this is the part of the conversation with Rogan and Gupta that annoyed Sam so much, and we talked about earlier, is they were talking at each other, fighting with two different studies that actually should have been complementary to say, okay, well, this study shows these are pros and cons here. This study shows these are pros and cons here. So now you have to weigh all of these issues to decide what you're going to do.
Well, not only that, you had to find the missing variable. Why did you get one result from one study? And why did you get another result from another study?
But I just mean in general that everybody has to weigh pros and cons all the time in their life. And, am I going to eat this Snickers bar? Well, it will make me feel better, but I'm also fat. But it will make me feel better. Okay, well, you got to weigh those pros and cons. You brought up chemo earlier. Okay, chemo really wrecks the body. On the other hand, that rectal bleeding might wreck your body faster. So which are you going to choose? And those are discussions that you have, with your doctor. And then if you want to do your own research and think about it or whatever, the point is that we're not having those conversations or being allowed to have those conversations.
Yeah. I can definitely kind of agree with that kind of entire premise of the pros and cons and where these conversations being had. I guess there's also the difficult line, right? Where do we draw the line between the individual doctor-patient relationship and the oversight to prevent something awful from happening, right? I mean, chiropractic still exists in the United States for some reason. Baffles my mind, and they can prescribe all kinds of drugs.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with you that's a problem. Yeah. But there is a time and place for chiropractic. So
I didn't know chiropractors could prescribe drugs.
Yeah.
Is that a state by state thing? Because I didn't think they could here in Texas.
They cannot schedule. They cannot do Schedule 2, Schedule 3 drugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, that'd be very controversial in another country. I don't know if chiropractic exists outside the United States anymore. I know it was definitely not. It had a huge problem in like the UK. People were not happy with chiropractors.
It does in Japan. I stayed with one, and he put me. What little bit I can do with my life was thanks to him. Okay. Seriously, like I stayed with him for a month, and when he found out I had a busted back and neck, he just, at the time, I think he was 72 years old, and he was about your size, Steven, and he threw me around like I wasn't, 220 pounds at the time. I was like, 210, 220 at the time, and he just put down some pillows on his living room floor and told me, grunted and pointed because he didn't speak very good English, and then just threw me around, and I was like, wow, that I feel better. And he treated me while I was there, and I was able to move around and do more than I had in the several years previous.
I think that was judo. I don't think that was.
Oh, is that what that was?
I thought it was some sexual ritual.
He just didn't like white people, and he was doing judo on me. Okay.
Did you have anal bleeding after that?
It all makes sense. Well, there were the hemorrhoids from all the drugs. So
yeah. He gave you some drugs, and
but But I guess
as we digress.
As we digress.
That's why he kept giving me That's why he kept giving me pudding pops. Right.
I woke up later and I felt great, but my butt hurt. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, as we talk about butt hurt, I do I guess we should wrap it up at some point because sure. Sam actually has to work for a living. Mm-hmm. I am curious about your perspective, Stephen, and your news sources. And I'm just curious what, if anything, you have heard about the waning efficacy of the vaccines, because you talked about vaccines and recommending them to people a little earlier. So I'm curious about what you've heard about the waning efficacy.
I actually haven't. If it's been particularly recent, I might not have heard much about it. I have heard of concerns of efficacy with the Delta variant, but if it's a general waning efficacy, if it's other than like the new recommendation for booster shots, I'm not too familiar if it's not one of those two things.
Okay. I was just curious, but you are right about the Delta variant. That isn't, the reporting sucks like everything. It's not being talked about that is really concerning is the scaremongering media tried to freak us all out about Delta early on. I don't remember how many people remember that, of when it hit Britain. It was supposed to be the worst thing. It's supposed to be the return of the bubonic plague. And it was actually a blip. I think people have forgotten that when it first hit Britain, it was a blip. Yeah, there was a little bit of a spike, but it wasn't that bad, and it went away pretty quick. It has actually gone back to Britain now, and it's kind of ugly. So it's back, and it's hitting them worse, which is a problem.
Yeah, the situation in India was particularly bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the problem with Delta variant is when we look at viruses in general, it's about the viral load. So it's not, you don't get one virus and you get sick, right? It's how much did you get exposed to? Yeah. And then when you talk immunity, how much can your body handle at any given time before it gets overwhelmed? And the Delta variant, it replicates at about 2/3 the rate. No, excuse me, in 2/3 the time that the Alpha did. So a third again faster than the other. So we're talking, it's coming out in the like if you did a PCR test, you're looking at about 28 cycles to get a positive test on alpha. You're looking at about 18 to 20 cycles to get a positive test out of Delta because it replicates so fast. It's just going. So your immune system's fighting. And I brought up in one of our other ones, the Galaga. It's like you're the little spaceship on the bottom, and the things are coming down, and you're fighting. Well, Delta is like you're on level 5, but you're the level 1 ship. You just can only fight it so fast. So that's why it's infecting people that are vaccinated, because you have a higher immune system. You've got those extra boosters, but it's coming so fast. It's just a freaking wave, a horde of viral load that's coming at you. And it's also more aerosol. So I've got this huge viral load and it's exploding in the air without droplets. It's just in the air. And so now you're spreading this viral load, mask or no, because it goes right through the mask. And it's a recipe for just spreading disease. What we do about it, I don't know, because vaccines are kind of helping ish. They're also making it to where you spread it more. Yeah, because you can be carrying it without knowing it. That's why from the beginning, we've been talking about this from the beginning. We should have been focusing on treatment from the beginning, but that's just one man's voice, I guess.
Our post-apocalypse sucks.
Was that?
Our post-apocalypse sucks. I blame Steven. Dang kids these days.
Hey.
No, as bad as this is, I mean, I think using the word apocalypse just makes it emotionally worse. It's not an apocalypse. A lot of people are going to die, which sucks, but it's not an apocalypse.
No, not yet anyway.
Not yet.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. That's a good place to leave it off.
Any final thoughts from our guest?
Oh boy. I mean, how to close so much conversation. You can't really sum it up, but I think we at least could come to an agreement that prevention, treatment, and doing everything we can to prevent more tragic deaths is really what it's all about. And when it comes down to it, the politics stink, they really do. I mean, we all want everyone to come out of this the best we can, and getting quagmired and, who said what and what team they're rooting for is really just irrelevant when your loved ones are getting buried.
Okay, so I know Heath hasn't had it. Have you had COVID?
I have not.
You have not, but you've been vaccinated.
I was vaccinated, so if I was asymptomatic, I don't know if I had it. But yeah, I try to be careful as much as I can around people. So. Oh,
it's just a question, not an accusation.
I've been walking around.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not. But
I've been walking around licking shopping carts, hoping I get it.
Well, no, because it's a legitimate thing. You guys are talking about human behavior with the vaccine. Is some people think they're invincible post-vaccination, and it can lead to worse behavior than they were, practicing before. So it's a good question.
All right. So I guess we'll close there.
Awesome.
Nice having you on. We'll do
thanks
it
for
again.
having me.
Yep. All right.